Let's bring in the UCLA head coach, Chip Kelly, who joins us on the program. Coach, how are you today?
I'm good. Trying to figure out how to navigate the next 6 months here.
How are you planning on doing that?
Well, we have to get rulings from the NCAA of what we're actually allowed to do with our players since the season has been postponed. So, what can you do? Right now, our guys are just lifting and running with our strength and conditioning coach. We haven't done any on-field work because we haven't actually been allowed to by the state and local authorities. So we were a little bit behind some of the other schools. You look at network television and see other schools practicing, and we haven't been allowed to do that yet. So we're trying to navigate and put a schedule together of what the next couple of months will look like.
How were you told that the season was postponed?
We had a meeting on Monday night with all the coaches and the athletic directors, and then with the medical staff, the COVID medical staff for the league, and they kind of gave us a lot of statistics of what's going on in the Pac-12 communities in terms of rates of COVID in the areas that we live in. Then they talked a little bit about the cardiac implications that they're starting to learn about with COVID. And then they talked about testing. And so that was Monday. Tuesday, there was going to be a meeting on Tuesday morning with the CEOs, the presidents and the chancellors of the university. And then they would vote on it, on what was going to be the determination of when do we play. And then I would get told around 1:00 on Tuesday afternoon that there was going to be a press release that we were going to postpone the season.
If it was a coach's vote, how would that have gone to play football?
That's, you know what? I don't know if we would have voted after listening to the medical people talk. I think going into that meeting, everybody was really gung-ho about getting back with our players and understanding, that there are implications for COVID, and everybody knew it. But I think after our meeting with the medical people, there were some eye-opening things there, at least for myself, that I was unaware of at the time. So,
what stood out? Can you give me one of those bullet points?
Yeah, I think the increased concern over the cardiovascular thing, when you look at Eduardo Rodriguez, the pitcher for the Red Sox, who's out with an inflamed heart, the young man in Indiana, Feeney, the offensive lineman that had an incident. They brought up there was a pitcher in the Tacoma area in Washington, a high school kid, 18-year-old kid that died from COVID in the springtime, and that could have been part of it also. So some of those things, I think, there was also a basketball player that played at Florida State that was playing overseas that passed away. So they came, that starts to hit home a little bit when you're starting to hear about, it's a little bit. And the other thing that we were made aware of is that you could be asymptomatic and still have heart issues. And some of these heart issues wouldn't be detected unless you had a cardiac MRI. And those are a little bit different and hard to get from a testing standpoint, is the way they explained it to us.
How did you tell your team?
We had a Zoom meeting. We're still not allowed to meet with them with that many people in person. So we got the news at 1:00, and then we got everybody on a Zoom call at 1:30. And then our position coaches called everybody individuals, and we're in the process of touching base with all of our kids individually. And then I was down at workouts yesterday. I'll be back down again today to talk to them face-to-face, or mask to mask, I should say.
Yeah. I'm trying to understand this, Chip, where the information you have of the Pac-12, how is that different? Is it different than what the ACC or the SEC or the Big 12 have, or the Big 10 has? I would love these medical communities to get together and make it on a Zoom call and share their information. Like, we should understand this, I think, to be fair to the sport, student athlete, and really to society. What is at stake here? And what are we finding out? And why aren't we cross-pollinating and sharing that information?
That's a great point. I don't know how that community talks. The other issue is that the prevalence of cases in the Pac-12 communities is different than the prevalence of cases in Nebraska, so to speak. So I think there's also, there can't be a one-size-fit-all as I understand this, because some areas have been infected a lot more and other areas aren't as infected, so I think that has to be taken into consideration. There are different parts of the country that aren't as infected as this, and that's the deal. And then the next step becomes testing. So if you have a community that has a lot of COVID cases, then your testing is slower than places when there's not a lot of it. That's why I don't think there's a one size fit all for some of these things, and that's where it gets frustrating when you look at it overall and say, how come? And we have to answer those questions. How come they can practice and we can't practice? But there were times earlier when we would send tests away, but it would take 7 to 10 days to get test results back. And understanding that is that we're trying to get our asymptomatic third string left guard tested, and there's people on ventilators that need to get tested. Yeah. So there's a social responsibility that goes along with it too when you're in a community that has a lot of COVID cases.
Has it hit you yet that you're not going to be coaching football this fall?
A little bit. But obviously it's not all us. I mean, women's soccer can't play. I go back to the spring when we were sitting in a meeting and our basketball coaches, Corey Close and our women's basketball team was getting ready to be a high-ranked team in the NCAA tournament. So they were affected. Our baseball and softball teams were affected in the springtime. So it is football, and that's our job, and that's our lives, and that's what we care about our players. But everybody's been affected by this. Mike Yan, who's a great sports media guy out here in the Pac-12, I just saw that he just got released and is not working because the Pac-12 network isn't going to be broadcasting games in the fall. So it's a little bit bigger, and I think we have to step back as individuals and say, poor me. There's a lot of people that have had implications from this, and we somehow have to get a handle on it because it's not just sports related, it's everything related. And when you get a death toll over 160,000 in this country, sometimes when you say, hey, I can't play football, I maybe there's some other things that are a little bit more important than us playing football right now.
I know you hope to play football in the spring. Do you expect to play football in the spring?
You know what? That's a great question, Dan. And I don't know if we can. And I've said that, can you play 2 seasons in one calendar year? And what is that toll? Our whole goal and everything we do, and our chancellor said it, our North Star that guides us is the health and safety of our players. So, we better really look from a health and safety standpoint. Say we have a vaccine. Can you actually play a football season in the spring and then come back and play a football season in the fall? That's never been done, but I think we need to look into that part too before we just say, hey, automatically we're just going to play in the springtime because, how safe is that? And I don't know that information. And when we get to situations where it's medical and some of those things, I'm going to defer to the experts in terms of what they will tell us, and because I don't have the answers on that situation.
Thank you, Coach. Do we know if players are going to be able to transfer? Are you concerned if any of your players would be able to go and try to play someplace this fall?
Yeah, we haven't heard anything from the NCAA. They just made a ruling yesterday about eligibility. You would retain your eligibility if you opted out or if you played in less than 50% of the games. So that's the first ruling that we've gotten. I think this is all new for everybody, as it came down with both the Big Ten and the Pac-12. And then, I know obviously we're the Power 5 conferences, but you feel for the guys in the Mountain West and the MAC. They're done. And then people have already forgotten about the Ivy League and Division II and Division III. And, we're not the only ones that have this, but the NCAA has to really come out quickly here with some rulings for everybody because players have to make decisions. So I don't know exactly what that ruling is and would kids be instantly eligible or not instantly eligible. And there's a lot of work to be done, even though we're not playing football, but there's a lot of work to be done, especially administratively.
How about USC and UCLA just have a scrimmage in November and we televise it? You okay with that?
I would love that. And I think Clay would love that too. We could put a bubble over the Rose Bowl and you could live up at the Rose Bowl for a couple weeks so that we made sure there was no COVID and then go play. I think that would be a great experience for everybody involved.
That'd be great. Coach, good luck. And thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
That's Chip Kelly, UCLA head coach.